Well, the American voters have had enough with the Democrats taking that. They're going to just ignore our laws and allow criminals to roam free, especially in our once great capital of Washington, D.C. Enough has been enough, as it normally has been isolated and separated from the normal Washington and Congress, is that it's kind of been its own little district, and it polices and essentially self-governs itself. But what happens when the people who are in charge of Washington, D.C. decide, you know what, we're just not going to enforce the laws anymore? Criminals will not be arrested. Criminals will not be prosecuted, especially if these criminals happen to be minors under the age of 18. Well, then they can basically do whatever they want, because this is given a self-awareness for the Democrats that somehow pretend that this makes them virtuous. But actually what it does is it harms the United States citizens. And Donald Trump, one of the many things that he ran on was that he was going to take our great country back from these radical left Democrats and make law and order great again. And he did that. We saw in LA, where the Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass refused to enforce our laws and was going to allow these radical leftists, domestic terrorists, take over, and just like in 2020, burn down our great cities. But then Donald Trump took over the National Guard, sent in the Marines, and shut it down. And of course, the Democrats immediately started playing that, this is just peaceful protest, and this was so brutal of Donald Trump. But the reality was just the opposite. See, it's very fake to allow criminals to harm American citizens and then yet somehow pretend that that is somehow virtuous. But see, to understand the Democrats and their party, the Democrats, the very center thing, that only thing that connects all of them together is their hatred for our great country, the United States of America. And the Democrats, they believe that the United States is dark and vile and sinful, and that it has so much blood on its hands that there is possible to wash it off. And so therefore, because the America is so bad, only the Democrats can come in and make it right again, which is absurd, not true, and also goes against everything that the American stands for, where we believe that in American exceptionalism, unlike where the Democrats believe that the greatest power here in the United States is you, the American people. And if we give the freedom, we keep the government out of your lives, that actually gives you the best opportunity, therefore, to have a great life. See, that is the American exceptionalism and the right to pursue happiness. And just to be clear, that does not mean no laws. And that does not mean, like the Democrats think, no arrests, no criminals, because it's the exact opposite of all that. As even our founding fathers, they understood that there has to be government and there has to be laws. But what good are laws if they're not enforced? And who enforces these laws? See, that's the very fundamental difference between our side of the fence and the Democrat side of the fence. See, our side of the fence, the conservative side, we believe that the greatest power is in you, the American people, the individual who lives in this country. And the more that we can find ways to stay out of your life, the better the choices that then you can make, as opposed to the Democrat side, who think that you're just too stupid to make your own decisions. I mean, the Democrats think that they are smarter than you. They think they are better than you. I mean, they have Ivy League degrees. You see, you're not educated enough to understand. And so they need to come in and they need to force you to understand through their big government, through their regulations. And then, of course, all that is very expensive. And so then tax you and bring you down to your knees. The opposite side of what we stand for, law and order and peace. And so through their fake virtually signaling, they decide that one, the Democrats break all these problems here in the United States. For example, they use and they break up families, and then they try to blame the American people as being the problem and not the federal government. And this is something we're going to get into a lot from DC, is DC has an overwhelming crime problem, but it's brought on by minors. And DC, just like other states like California, have refused to go and prosecute minors and allow them to do great crime and harm to our society. And Donald Trump has said, this is enough. We are now going to set DC free. And part of the operation of liberate America from the Democrats' crime wave begins now. As President Trump, he once said, and I think this is a great quote, is this Elon Musk requoted this. It says, my father used to tell me, son, when you walk into a restaurant and you see a dirty floor, do not go in, because that floor is dirty, then also the kitchen is dirty. And that's what has happened with the Democrats under our once great Capitol. As they've refused to enforce our laws, as they refuse to lock up criminals, just like everywhere else they have power, and it continues to get worse and worse and worse. As crime rates soar through the roof, and yes, the Democrats are lying about that too. We will cover that. Do not doubt it for a single second. But also what the Democrats are also doing is then when they refuse to enforce our laws, see, this is the other side that's really sick about it, is if you have a law, it's only good as it's being enforced. It makes sense? But the Democrats, they decide, you know what, we're just not going to enforce that law. We're not going to arrest them. We're not going to prosecute them. We'll lower the charges. They were busted doing that too. And then all of a sudden, what good is that law to the American people? And then what happens? Of course, crime goes through the roof. And so they justify the crime and then underreport or refuse to arrest or refuse to prosecute. And then all the homeless moves in, and then you have the dirty, disgusting, and criminals that take over our once great cities that used to be beautiful, that used to be beacons. And now they're dirty, rotten Democrat hellholes. And enough has been enough. And of course, the AG and the Democrats, their solution is to keep doing what it's been doing and not if it works. Instead, according to the AG, so this is the AG DC, Brian Swalt, as he goes and he says that unfortunately for you, the American people, arresting criminals is not how you solve problems. What? No, I'm not kidding. He really did say that today. Here's the clip.
During the discussion, residents did not hold back, voicing their frustrations.
I blame the system.
Many questioning why kids aren't being held accountable.
We as a city and a community need to be much more focused on prevention and surrounding young people and their families with resources if we want to be safer in the long run. We cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it.
During the discussion, residents did not hold back, voicing.
You cannot arrest and prosecute your way out of crime. What the heck is he talking about? What does he mean? That's exactly what you do. That is 100% the answer. You take criminals and you arrest them. And some criminals, they can have their lives turned around, usually very on in their lives. But there has to come a point where you say enough is enough. And if you break our laws and you commit violent acts, I don't care if you're a minor or not, you get removed from society immediately. And if the act is violent enough, you are never to return. This is exactly how we solve crime, because most crime is committed by a very small percentage of the American population. And people naturally instinct this. So the Democrats, of course, what do? Is they pretend the crime's not happening. And so they do this fake virtue signaling where they're not going to arrest, they're not going to prosecute, and then see crime goes down. Wow, that's magical. I mean, the moment you stop arresting criminals, all of a sudden, look at that, crime stats go down. But they get busted even further than that. As Trump promises, DC will be safe again. DC will be clean again. DC will be beautiful again. And DC will be set free again. This is how we take our country back from the radical left, is we fight back and we win. But the Democrats, of course, are trying to switch everything around and pretend that it's not their policies that caused all this. No. See, what's really causing this is you, the Republicans, for fighting back, apparently. We have Jamie Raskins in there who loves to make a fool of himself on TV. And this is what he said. I mean, this will absolutely blow you away that he actually looked in the camera and he said this. Raskin says, sure, there are public safety problems in DC, but who do you trust to fix it? Donald Trump or the people who are running Washington, D.C. that allowed all these crimes to happen? So I don't know, American voters. Who do you trust to fix these crimes? Do you trust the Democrats who've done nothing everywhere that they have power? Everywhere, every big city that they have, every state that Democrats have control of, crime goes up, standard of living goes down. And then the solutions, of course, are always more taxes and more regulations, but that never ever solves the problems, because it doesn't solve the problems because the Democrats are the ones who are creating these problems. And to justify and lie, that's exactly what they do. Is they then try to hide the stats and truth from you, the American people. And this is how they do it. They lie and they say the crime is down in DC. We're going to cover that here in a very second, because when they say 30% down, that is a blatant, bold lie. And then also they try to switch remember the Epstein list. What about the Epstein list that they just magically got so excited about when you had Joe Biden and Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland had the exact same information for 4 years? And yet the Democrats just sat on it this entire time. And then now all of a sudden, 6 months into Trump's term, they're all of a sudden saying that they're so concerned about this Epstein list. And what's even more ironic is Trump's like, you know what, fine. Release what you have. Do it. You know why it's not out? Because an Obama judge is blocking it. You almost can't make up this kind of hypocrisy. And then we have one that I really liked a lot. This was from Adam Smith, and he said this: mercy to the guilty is cruel to the innocent. With that, I agree 100%. Anytime you're merciful to the people who are committing the crimes, the other side of that is the people who are innocent are the ones who suffer the most. How many times you see in these great big cities that are run by Democrats where something horrific and tragic happens, and then later, of course, we find out they had a long rap sheet, and these judges and these Soros-backed DAs kept releasing these criminals back into society over and over and over and over again. And very predictably, these criminals, every time they go back into society, the crimes get worse. Like clockwork. For the Democrats, the reason why they do this is it's very nefarious as they lie to you about their intentions, as they try to pretend that they're somehow being virtuous by siding with criminals every single time against the American citizens. Like somehow we need to show mercy, or we need to show, compassion, but not to the American people. I asked Lake and Riley, when they allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens to come into this country, and now you have all the human trafficking, you have all the fentanyl, you have all the violent crime that is happening. And again, over and over and over again, they're not dreamers. They're violent cartel drug members who are harming our society, who never should have been here in the first place. And just like what's happening in Washington, D.C., they continue to have to lie about what's happening there too. Because the Democrats, they need society to collapse. Okay, do not doubt that for a single second. That is the one single goal that the Democrats have. As the only thing that brings all the Democrats together is their hatred for the United States of America. So because they hate the United States so much, it has to collapse if it's bad. Because if the United States actually does well and succeeds, well, then that proves the Democrats were wrong. It's just like when they warn you that Donald Trump, all these bad things are going to happen, except, of course, they're not happening. And then the Democrats, of course, just go on and move on to the next thing, right? The eggs. And then they blame the stock market. And now they're blaming Washington, D.C. For the Democrats to have power, they have to have debt victims. Do not doubt that for a single second. The Democrats, they need you to fail. Because if you succeed and you win and you do well, then all of a sudden you don't need the Democrats anymore. That is the very heart of the Democrats. And Trump, as he proves, that when we go and we fight back and we win, this forces the Democrats to tell you who they really are. As they pretend that they're for the workers, but then they allow all these violent thugs to go back on the streets and be criminals. And the Trump, of all his amazement, has gotten the Democrats to protest against cleaning up crime. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. They can't be on the one side of a single 80-20 issue. As DC has turned into a war zone, it's one of the most violent areas, and not only in the Washington or United States, but also one of the most violent criminal places in the world. All because the Democrats refuse to lock up criminals. And as we've been alluding to, when they're lying about crime is down 30%, we're going to explain exactly how that is a lie. And this is the same old talking points as these radical leftists go and they protest against Donald Trump cleaning up New York City. As like, you, the American people, voted for. Because they say things like, you taking on the crime when you let these people out done messed up January 6th. Oh, wow. Going back to the January 6th. That's really stunning and brave of you Democrats. And they can't understand why this is not being bought by the American people. It's because the American people now have realized how big of a hoax that January 6th was. Now, anyone that assaulted officers should go to jail, and they did. But they also way overcharged people who did virtually nothing wrong, at worst did minor misdemeanors, and then they charged them with felonies and tried to ruin their lives. Also overcharging people for who did violence, but they did their time and refused to let them out of prison. Apparently that's the only criminals that the Democrats don't like. And then the other favorite ones, maybe Trump needs to implement more tax-funded programs. When it's the tax-funded programs that are causing this, because they always have the hooks and they take away your freedom and your agency. You go in, you get this government money. This government money is not free, and it doesn't come from the government. It comes from you, the American taxpayers. So it takes money away from the people who produce and work and give it to the people who don't. Now, of course, we do want some social safety nets. And I think on my side, mostly, we want not just the Democrats, but also the government not involved in these social safety nets at all. I prefer them all to be privatized. Through like Christian organizations, I think would do a much more efficient job rather than the government who uses all this bureaucracy and uses all these career useless people and then doesn't actually solve any problems because of the hooks that they put in these programs. They'll say, okay, you can have Section 8 housing and you can have food stamps, but the father cannot be in the home. And what do we know about single mothers over and over again? They live in the highest percentage of poverty and they get stuck with crime and poverty. And it's very likely that those children will also grow up in poverty and in crime and then not have fathers in their own homes as well. See, when the Democrats, when they corrupted the civil rights movement into the Great Society, the amount of damage they did, which mostly showed off to the Black community, but it's not just to the Black community, as these programs do this over and over again. Everywhere the government goes and shows up and pretends that they're helping people with these programs actually causes poverty, crime, drug addiction, and death. But try to find a single government program like these that has actually made people's lives better. All the way down from like welfare to food stamps, all the way up to Social Security or Medicaid. When they sound good on the surface and no politicians ever want to touch this stuff, but how many people do you see on Social Security that live in like single wide trailers and in deep poverty? Because the government failed at that too. And I'm already up against a break. It goes fast when we're having fun. When we come back, we're going to start breaking down more into the Democrats in the Washington, D.C., as they say supposedly that crime is down by 30%. But is it really? It is not. And we're going to prove it here in this next section. You're not going to miss that or anything else. We'll be right back after this greedy profit break. This is the Cash Loren Show.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2025, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage on all 3 of the major networks, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Folks, have you wanted to start a podcast but you just don't know where to begin? Podbeam is your all-in-one solution to host your podcast and distribute it all across the internet. With my code on the affiliate link down below, you will gain also 1 month free to try the Podbeam service. This is really your one-stop solution to hosting your podcast. Record it, you put it up to just a single upload, then that upload will distribute to all of the main platforms all across the internet, including Apple and Spotify and many, many others. It will then also automatically share your podcast across all major social media, making your job easier so you can spend more time recording the podcasts that you love and less time managing them on the back end. Podbeam is your all-in-one solution for your podcast needs. Click on the link below, the CASHLOREN, and get your 1 free month today. The corporate media has lied to the American voters for such a long time that they have lost all their influence as a result. And this has also led to the rise of the independent creators, just like here on the CASHLOREN show, where we take our spare bedroom and convert it into a studio. If you're enjoying this content, it will always be free, but you can continue to help support monetarily if you choose to do so. Click on the locals link. It is only $5 a month. This is just a cup of coffee. Not only will you be supporting an independent creator, but you'll be getting lots of free perks in addition to that as well, including exclusive articles and Sunday shows, and thanking you at the end of videos with your name recognition. Take a moment and consider and help support independent creators as we fight fake news. Go to locals right now, hit the support button for just a cup of coffee a month. It'll be worth every single penny, and you're getting lots of extra benefits too. Well, we've been spending a lot of time talking about the Washington, D.C., as they have gone and they have allowed crime to go rampant, causing Donald Trump to send in the National Guard and take over the Metropolitan Police Force. And the Democrats are absolutely losing their minds now because they think that they are entitled to rule over these cities. And to do that, they've also continued to lie about criminal statistics here in these cities. As we have this comment on YouTube here, and I'm going to prove just how bad these fake news, the MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, New York Times, Other Times, Washington Post, Politico, Axios are trying to mislead the American voters to what's happening in the Democrats in their cities and their states. As this voter on YouTube says, interesting enough, crime in DC has been on the decline. This is false. Wasting taxpayer money to deploy the national security. So it's waste of taxpayers' money to secure our cities and start crime. Interesting, Democrats. Keep being pro-criminal and then wondering why you are less than 17% approval ratings. And they don't have the authority to arrest people in civil law. Of course, one, nonsense, but two, the police do, and they will, finally, arrest and prosecute all these criminals just like they should be. As we have from Judge Jeannie, as she posted here, especially we're talking about how the Democrats, what they've done is they've decided they're just not going to arrest or prosecute you. And she laid down the law here. She goes, I see too much violent crime being committed by young punks. Our laws are weak. We can't touch anyone when they're 14 to 17 years old. That changes today. 100%. You're going to commit crimes in our cities, then you go to jail. And when they go to jail, watch what happens, how crime, all this magically goes down. It's amazing. When you lock up criminals, they stop committing crime. You don't have to arrest them 10, 20, 30 times, amazingly enough. And the DC mayor, I believe that the president views that DC is shaped by COVID era expenses. Of course she does, because she doesn't want to admit that their choice to not enforce our laws have caused them to lose control of our once great Washington, D.C. And now you have the Congress members, the DC City Council member, as he is freaking out because of Donald Trump is actually going to arrest criminals, because Democrats love criminals.
Action from D.C. council members.
We are, Pamela and Wolf. This coming into CNN from Council Member Charles Allen of the 6th Ward in D.C. His post is, quote, "The president taking over local control of MPD and putting the U.S. military onto the streets of D.C. under the guise of public safety is wrong. It's an extreme, outrageous, and dangerous move for our city and the safety of all of our residents." He's the first city council member to react.
Enforcing our laws is a danger to the safety of the city. Wow. I mean, why are the Democrats at 17%? I just can't understand. Why are they so unpopular? Why is CNN bleeding viewers? And they're down almost roughly 50% just from last year. I can't imagine why, when they keep running garbage like that. When they sit there and they pretend that everything that you're seeing, everything that you're experiencing is not happening. So the lie that they're trying to tell now is that, as I posted on YouTube earlier from this comment, and now also all the same Democrats are running with the same talking points, that violent crime is down in DC to a 30-year low. Of course, this is not true, and we're going to show exactly how. But all the Democrats run the exact same talking points. Hakeem Jeffries: violence in Washington, D.C. is a 30-year low. Donald Trump has no basis to take over the local police department. Zero credibility on law and order. Yeah, Democrats projecting heavily here, but they have no authority on law and order. Of course, with going back to the J6, I assume. And then you have all the other same Democrats. It's amazing how they all get their same exact talking points. You notice how they all use the same phrase, like, who is giving this to them? So it's all 30-year lows, a 30-year low, it's a 30-year low. In unison. I mean, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, all at the same time. But here's the part that they're not telling you that I've been promising. So this is from the DC police commander suspended, accused of changing crime statistics. I'm going to read that again. The DC police commander has been suspended, accused of changing crime statistics. The police union says the directive to change offensive classifications come from the commanding staff. But what DC was doing to get these crimes to a 30-year low is that they weren't arresting people. 2, if they arrested them, they wouldn't prosecute them. Or 3, if they did get arrested or prosecuted, they reduced the crime so they didn't report to the places like the FBI for their crime statistics because they were too low below the threshold. The crime is not at a 30-year low in DC. And what really brought this to the American people and helped bring all of this, unfortunately, when something really terrible and tragic happens, is what happened to the Doge team member Big Balls. I still crack when I say as the mainstream media was forced to call him Big Balls over and over again. But this young patriot, this young hero who is deciding to serve his country, and his call to serve was behind a computer, was to go and find all the fraud and waste and abuse within Doge and start to expose where all your tax dollars are going. When there's $5 trillion coming in and $7 trillion going out the door, and no one knows where this money is going. And in the short amount of time, the billions of dollars that they have discovered. And Elon Musk thinks that they can find $2 trillion in a single year. I really think that they can get higher than that. But what happened in Washington, D.C. was this poor woman was being assaulted by these violent thugs that the DC police and prosecutors refused to put in prison. And this young patriot went and tried to stop it and got the living kicked out of him for it. And those pictures, of course, went all over the news, and this really woke people up to just how bad this is happening. And it wasn't just them. This is also what happened in LA when Bass and Gavin Newsom were going to do absolutely nothing about these violent invaders of our country trying to take down LA and burn it to the ground, just like what happened in 2020. Okay, Newsom and Bass were going to do nothing, just like they weren't going to put water in the fire hydrants for all those poor people who lost their houses. But Trump is fighting back and winning, and this is why it's so popular, and this is why we have to continue to fight back. This is the results. When we fight back, we expose the Democrats and force them to show who they are. When they lie and they say that it's at a 30-year low, and then we find out this, that to get to that, the police chief was changing statistics, and not only the police commander, and not only were they changing statistics, they weren't arresting and they weren't prosecuting. But here are some of the real statistics. DC has the 4th highest homicide rate in the United States in 2024, with a rate 27.3 homicide per 100,000 people. Does that sound like a 30-year low to you? DC homicide rate is almost 6 times higher than New York City's rate. New York City. DC homicide rate is almost 4 times higher than LA. DC homicide rate is more than double New York's rate of 12.2. DC also beats out Atlanta, Chicago, and Compton, and Oakland. So that's how violent and dangerous DC is because of the Democrats. But it gets even worse. Now we bring up on the national stage. So they're more deadly than all these other nations and cities because the Democrats refuse to lock criminals up. And it's not complicated. It's really not a hard thing. If you put criminals behind bars, they can no longer commit crimes. And that used to be something that we could all at least agree on. I mean, what happened to the Democrats when they pretended they were being pro-worker? Then why aren't they locking these criminals up so they stop assaulting workers? They have no answer, so of course they have to lie. In order to lie, they have to try to change statistics. And they try to have to lie, and they try to have to hide them from you, the American people. They do this all the time. On today's, we're talking about the crime statistics. They do this with job statistics. They do this with economy statistics. Over and over and over again, it happens, and then it gets adjusted later. And the mainstream media, who's completely complicit on this, just moves on. As we have here with CNN, and now this is Raskins going on and pretending, would you rather have the Democrats or the Republicans in charge of DC?
People don't always feel the statistics, right? Do you, as someone who, works in the District of Columbia, you drive through it all the time, you know a lot of people who live here all the time, do you feel like crime is down in DC?
You will never hate fake news enough. When I say that you will never hate fake news enough, I mean you will never hate fake news enough. See how this is why people like Raskins, why they can only go to corporate media. Because anybody else would ask them a real question, like, hey, why is Washington, D.C. have such a high murder rate if you're claiming that it's at a 30-year low? And why is the commander being removed from his office for changing statistics? But you don't hear any of that for corporate media, and that's why Raskins has to go there and then tell this whopper after CNN throws him this softball.
See, compared to other more recent years?
Well, definitely when you compare it to other periods in the history of Washington, D.C., when there was very serious spikes in crime and it felt really dangerous to go out. But look, I agree, you can't feel safe enough, especially these days. The question is who you trust to promote your security and public safety. Is it the mayor and the council and the people who actually report to people who live there? Or do you trust Donald Trump to do that? Because, his attention span is like,
Yeah. Close to 80 million people voted for Donald Trump as he ran on law and order. In fact, you, the American people, do trust Donald Trump as he won all 7 swing states. And you trust Donald Trump because he won the popular vote for the first time in a very long time for Republicans. All on doing our laws, securing our border, deporting illegal immigrants, and locking criminals up. These were all Donald Trump campaign promises, and promises made and promises kept. And the Democrats who keep releasing these violent criminals are absolutely losing their minds because somebody's going to actually enforce our laws. Amazing. What will happen? Just like what happened with LA, instead of like in 2020 is now when Donald Trump went in there with the National Guard and went in there with the Marines and shut it down and stopped them from burning down that beautiful city, which once was. The same thing's happening in Washington, D.C. Enough is enough. Enough with all these homeless, enough with all the crime, and enough with all these juveniles not being prosecuted. Again, D.C. police commander suspended, accused of changing criminal statistics. D.C. had the fourth highest homicide rate in all of the United States. I didn't hear CNN bring in any of that because this is how the corporate media works with the Democrat Party, the Union Party, is this is all created for them to lie to you, the American people. Very simply. They're more than happy to lie to you. See, the mainstream media, they are not journalists. They are activists for the Democrat Party, every single one of them. MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Political Axios, every single one of them is in the bag for the DNC. They do not have a single journalistic bone in their body. And when they do the softballs, just like you heard, we are lying to you and saying that crime's at a 30-year low is what CNN is running with and all the others. And what do they always do to try to get you to come to a conclusion that you never would have came to if you would have known all the facts? Is they only tell you parts of the truth. And then they wrap it in lies. And so if you only had CNN and these other corporate media and the Democrats, what do you think? That crime is at a 30-year low. Because that's only true if you don't have a whole picture of what's happening. They're not arresting. They're not prosecuting. When they do have to arrest or prosecute, they're lowering the crime to below like the FBI guidelines to report to the FBI for those criminal statistics. And then now the police commander is suspended for changing the crime statistics so that Democrats can then lie to you. So that's the parts they won't tell you. And that's why people like Raskins can only go to CNN because anybody else would bring that up. And it's so bad. Let's see, do I have this one in my notes? Okay, that was there. That was there. I don't think I have this one. So this is even what Google have to come back. And it's so bad to tell you the truth. In the fiscal year 2022, the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. declined to prosecute 67 criminal arrests. Say it again. U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. declined to prosecute 67% of the criminal arrests. Gee, I wonder, does crime go down if you refuse to prosecute criminals? Or is crime actually going up and they're just lying about it? In the fiscal year 2023, the declination rate of DC arrests dropped by 56%. So they refused to arrest people, just like I was saying, and they refused to prosecute people, just like I was saying. Folks, you were right 98% of the time here on the Cash Loren Show. And this is why independent creators are growing at a rapid rate and why the corporate media is absolutely collapsing and why the Democrats have no trust left. And we're going to continue to expose the mainstream media and all the other things that they're lying about, like Washington, D.C., and other places right after we come back from this greedy profit break. You're not going to miss that or anything else. And coming up, this is the Cash Loren Show. Be right back after this greedy profit break.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2025, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage on all 3 of the major networks, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Folks, have you wanted to start a podcast but you just don't know where to begin? Podbeam is your all-in-one solution to host your podcast and distribute it all across the internet. With my code on the affiliate link down below, you will gain also 1 month free to try the Podbeam service. This is really your one-stop solution to hosting your podcast. Record it, you put it up to just a single upload, then that upload will distribute to all of the main platforms all across the internet, including Apple and Spotify and many, many others. It will then also automatically share your podcast across all major social media, making your job easier so you can spend more time recording the podcasts that you love and less time managing them on the back end. Podbeam is your all-in-one solution for your podcast needs. Click on the link below, the CASHLOREN, and get your 1 free month today. The corporate media has lied to the American voters for such a long time that they have lost all their influence as a result. And this has also led to the rise of the independent creators, just like here on the CASHLOREN show, where we take our spare bedroom and convert it into a studio. If you're enjoying this content, it will always be free, but you can continue to help support monetarily if you choose to do so. Click on the locals link. It is only $5 a month. This is just a cup of coffee. Not only will you be supporting an independent creator, but you'll be getting lots of free perks in addition to that as well, including exclusive articles and Sunday shows, and thanking you at the end of videos with your name recognition. Take a moment and consider and help support independent creators as we fight fake news. Go to locals right now, hit the support button for just a cup of coffee a month. It'll be worth every single penny, and you're getting lots of extra benefits too. Well, today's battle is going up against the Washington, D.C., as they have allowed violent crime to skyrocket in our capital. Now, Donald Trump has activated the National Guard and taken over the police department, and he is going to restore law and order. Promises made and promises kept. So welcome back, everybody, to the CASHLOREN show, where we make liberals cry tears that are saltier than you-know-who's fries. It's great to be with all of you again. I hope you all had a great weekend, and we will, as we go and we continue to expose the mainstream media as they go and they lie to you about what's happening in Washington, D.C., with help of the Democrat Party and these wild activists that get in charge of places like Washington, D.C. As all the Democrats, they've been lining up today and saying, that why does Donald Trump, why does he need to go into Washington, D.C. and take over? I mean, crime is at a 30-year low. So why does he need to send in the National Guard again? I mean, Trump must be a bully and a racist and a bigot. But they were lying about all of that, as we show in these statistics. Like the commander was changing crime statistics. The Washington, D.C. has a, what was that, 40, geez, I can't read on this, 40, let me bring back that subject, has a fourth highest homicide rate in the United States in 2004, 23.7% homicide with 100,000 people. So the mainstream media, the corporate media, and the Democrats, they all go with the same 30% posts, but they won't tell you any of these pieces. As they all go through it. See, all of them, 30-year low, 30-year low, 30 low. I really would like to know who's giving the Democrats their talking points, because magically they always say the exact same thing at the same time together. As we now have this one from Axios. Trump has taken over DC police. Here are the big city he says he is targeting next. Oh, the Democrats pretend to be victims as they refuse to enforce our laws. So, we're going to go and we're going to force our laws. And now all of a sudden, oh no, they're victims because Donald Trump is going into these cities, which happen to be Democrats because Democrats refuse to enforce our laws and now pretend that it's the criminals that are the villains. You notice that? Are the victims. You notice that every single time with the Democrat Party, right? It seems to be the only people they care about are violent criminals and illegal aliens. They don't seem to care what happens to the American citizens when they keep releasing these violent criminals back onto our streets. I don't see Axios or any of the others writing articles for them, but the minute that our laws start trying to be enforced, all of a sudden, they write these hit pieces. And then they wonder why the independent creators are gaining at a quick rate, but yet all the Democrats here are losing their influence, and mainstream media is bleeding their audience. We also have here from the Washington Post. Breaking news, Mayor Muriel Bowser called President Trump's federal takeover of the D.C. Department unsettling and unprecedented because it's unsettling and unprecedented to lock up criminals to the Democrats. Her first public statement since Trump announced the move. As the Democrats were just happy to keep releasing criminals out to our streets. And then this one is a real whopper. So this one is from the Washington Post. This is a safe city, according to anonymous source, Washington Post. But over hearing the witness gang threats and then watching the camera footage of thuggery, it's disturbing. Said one resident, speaking on the condition of anonymity over concerns of public safety. I mean, this takes fire mostly peaceful with a burning building behind CNN to an entirely new level. Is now this city is safe, but they have to speak anonymity why there's violent crime happening because of their concern for their public safety. My gosh. You just can't make up this corporate media nonsense enough. Here is another one from TMZ. President Trump deployed National Guard in D.C. despite plunging crime statistics, which again were completely made up and not true. But also TMZ, who is owned by the Fox Corporation, the Murdochs, who hate Donald Trump. And again, a quick reminder, the police D.C. commander suspended, accused of changing crime statistics. D.C. has a fourth highest homicide rate in the United States with a 27.3 homicide rate per 100,000 people. You do not hate the mainstream media and the Democrats enough for these reasons. And then Dana Bash continues to double down on all this. Respond to Trump federalized D.C. police violence crime. Dana Bash says, I should note that most violent moment in recent D.C. history was January 6th. As a Democrat, they just can't let the January 6th hoax go. In fact, they continue to get brutalized. Let's see, where was it? Was it back here? Here it is. So this is Nancy Pelosi's post. And did I load that one up? I don't think I did. So Nancy Pelosi, she said, Donald Trump delayed deploying the National Guard on January 6th is a lie. When our capital was under violent attack and lives were at stake. Remember, Washington, D.C. under Democrats, the fourth highest murder rate. And now the Democrats, of course, are trying right back to January 6th, when the only person that died was a Trump supporter who was shot by a cop. And that police officer, hopefully and should be, spend the rest of their lives in prison for what they did. But then she is immediately called out by Chief Stephen Son, who was there. And he goes, ma'am, it's a long past time to be honest with the American people. On January 3rd, I requested National Guard assistance, but your Sergeant at Arms, Nancy Pelosi, denied it. Under federal law, I was prohibited from calling them in without special approval. Nancy Pelosi, not Trump. See, Trump was right again. The same day, Caroline Corbin at the Pentagon offered National Guard support, but I was forced to decline because of the lack of legal authority. On January 6th, while the Capitol was under attack and despite my repeated calls, your sergeant at arms again denied my urgent request for 70 agonizing minutes, running it up the chain for your approval, Nancy Pelosi's approval. When I needed assistance, I was denied. Yet when it suited you, you ordered fencing top with a chlorine wire and surrounded the Capitol with thousands of armed National Guard troops. And those National Armed Guard troops, they didn't have any bullets in their guns. They were all for looks after their January 6th. This is what we're up against with the Democrats, with the Rhino Uniparty, and with the corporate media. They are all in the bag together. I call this the three-headed beast from the DC abyss. You have the first head, this being the deep state. And these are these unelected bureaucrats that think that they have the right to rule over you. And they think that because they have these Ivy League degrees, because they wear these fancy suits, because they have these immaculate offices, that they are smarter than you, that they are better than you, and that they despise you, the American voters. Never, ever doubt that for a single second. You can walk right by them in a grocery store. You have no idea who they are. They are accountable to no one, but they rule over everyone. They're the ones that write the laws and then pass them off to the Congress who's pretending to be in charge. They don't read it. They sign it all off. It goes back to the DC. Then these unelected bureaucrats just decide what laws are going to enforce and not going to enforce, and then where all your money goes. If you want to see the blob, if you want to see the deep state, if you want to see this first head of the DC abyss, you're never going to get a better picture than you are right now because Donald Trump went and fought back. And the second head being the Democrats and the Rhino Uniparty. The problem with the Democrats and the Rhino Uniparty is that they want the deep state to be in charge. This is why they keep growing it. Every time something happens, their solution is to expand the deep state, to create some other federal three-letter alphabet soup agency to actually write the rules and laws and regulations to rule over you. And if there's ever any fallback, if there's ever anything that happens, well, then all the politicians, what do they immediately do is, hey, don't talk to me. I didn't do that. No, it's not my fault. I'm just one House member. I'm a senator. Go talk to LNI. Go talk to OSHA. Go talk to the FBI. Go talk to the DOJ. Go talk to the IRS. They're the ones that are doing this. Go talk to them. But how far have you ever been able to get to go with these unelected bureaucrats? Of course, nowhere. This is a perfect gig for these politicians, these shiny-shoed Democrats, and their helps in the Rhino Uniparty. So these being the Republicans in name only, but really they are Democrats. The Rand Pauls, the Thomas Macy's, and the rest of them in this world who talk very tough and very good in front of a camera, right? How terrorists are so bad and how he's going to go after Fauci. Or Thomas Macy loves to scream about how he's going to reduce the government's debt and how he's such a constitutionalist, but they never actually do anything. That's how you spot these hypocrites. When you have people like Thomas Macy, who actually had two chances in 2024 to actually reduce the debt. But when he actually had to do more than to run his mouth, what did he do? He voted with the Democrats to raise the debt, under the so-called promise from the same people who have been raising the debt forever that they will reduce it later at time. Because he doesn't believe it, you don't believe it, nobody believes it. But this was Thomas Macy as part of the Rhino Uniparty to hurt you, the American people, for voting for Donald Trump. Okay, never doubt what I'm saying for a single second. This Uniparty is real. It exists. And Donald Trump is the one that's exposing it and fighting it. Here in Washington, D.C., in the crime, and here in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol. And then the third head, of course, is the corporate media. as they all work together. You have MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Political Axios. Every single one of them are Team DNC. They are all in the bag for the Democrats. None single one has a journalistic bone in their body. And they're more than happy to lie to you, the American people, endlessly about what the Democrats and the Rhino Uniparty do. And we spent this entire episode how they're more than happy to cover for Washington, D.C. now about what's happening with crime and saying, it's at a 30-year low as they all ran the same together. But it's actually they were lying about changing the crime statistics. This happens in every single Democrat city and state. But the Washington, D.C. actually happened to get busted. And then they don't arrest criminals. They don't prosecute criminals. And then when they do have to do either one, they often will reduce the crimes to a level so they don't have to report it to the FBI. And then magically, poof, crime is down, even though when it's not down. Now Trump is bringing the National Guard in, promises made and promises kept. This is the one thing that this uniparty, this three-headed beast from the DC abyss, dreads more than anything else is a billionaire populace, because that they would actually have the power to fight back against them. This wouldn't be like a Bush and a Cheney who sit there and pretend to be opposition, but really are very happy to do everything the Democrats wanted to do. So all of a sudden the federal government grows, right? There's a lot more agencies. And then the Democrats come in, what happens? Of course, more taxes, more inflation, and the government grows over and over and over and over again until a billionaire populace actually comes up and puts an end to it and rallies you, the American people, against the Rhino Uniparty, who is opposed to you, who thinks that they have the right to rule over you, who somehow make a couple $100,000 a year and then all of a sudden become more tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in a very short amount of time. And yet they never seem to fix a single problem. I wonder why that is. It just gets worse and worse and worse. I mean, has this experience been any different for anybody else until Trump came back? And now we're actually doing all the things that they said they were going to do, but they never ever did. Trump is using Doge to expose the federal government waste, then using the big, beautiful bill and his recirculation packages to reduce the debt $9 trillion, $8 billion, or $9 billion. You get the memory right. $8 billion in the USAID, and then $1 billion from NPR and PBS, where our tax dollars should not be going to push left-wing propaganda. And then the same thing with USAID, taking our tax dollars, the money that's supposed to be yours, and then investing in all these NGOs and all these left-wing Democrat activists. Enough is enough. America voted for Donald Trump. Almost 80 million of you voted for Donald Trump, the first Republican to win the popular vote in over 20 years. He won all 7 swing states after they called him every name in the book, after they threw criminal and civil investigation and charges and convictions at him. None of it worked because the deep state, the mainstream media, and the Democrats have zero credibility left. And with that, the rest of these stories have to go in the stack for another day. And we're going to end today's show. We'll be back again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern here on the Cash Loren Show. I want to thank everyone that is supporting the show. It means very much to me. If you are enjoying the show, please take a moment and like it and share the show. The best thing you can do is free. Word of mouth costs nothing. And if you want to support the show further, then you can do so right now over at Locals for just $5 a month and help independent creators take on these corporations that have billions and billions of dollars. And you'll gain additional perks for do so. So I want to thank Patrick and Allison and Byron and Sherry for all their support month after month. And if you want to also join that, please do so. We'll bring you up in after shows and much more, just like here at the end of this show here. And we'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. This is the Cash Loren Show.